Right, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, everybody. I'll start the presentation in about 3 or 4 minutes' time, just to let everybody come into the room. But I've got a quick presentation, 30 to 45 minutes today, in relation to supporting your workers and remote working and flexible working in the working environment. So I'll start off in 3 or 4 minutes just to let everybody in, and we can go from there. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Neal. I run the security department here at Cardinus, and I have the pleasure today of speaking to you for around about 30 to 40 minutes on supporting the remote workers in the flexible working environment. Just as we go through, obviously there'll be some questions that you can raise. We can answer those questions as we go along. But please feel free to sit back and listen to what I've got to say, and I hope you enjoy this little session. Okay, good. So really, when we're looking at the workforce, I often hear people talk about, what's the most important asset, and they secure buildings, they secure transportation, but their main asset really are their people. So the modern workforce is about looking after your people. And when I was looking at this presentation, if you look at the modern industry, particularly with what's happened with the pandemic, I'm sure you've been to a few presentations or booked into a few presentations on well-being, safety, and on ergonomic type factors. And in this program, we're going to look at it as a modern system of operating with people in any environment. So your staff working from traveling overseas, any pressures they're involved in. I'm just going to give you a few tools of what to look for in the workplace. And I think the modern workforce is a multifaceted place now. And so if we've got a system to work in to support the workforce, then in my opinion, that's a very modern and proactive way of approaching looking after your people. Good. Okay, so a little bit about us. I work in a global reach. We operate in 26 different countries around the world, advising on risk, particularly towards people safety. Obviously, from a security background, it's a slightly different matrix for well-being, but the principles are exactly the same. So we've devised a system that supports your workforce and gives you an effective risk assessment tool, if you like, to address the risks to your workforce, including mental health and well-being, as well as security and safety. And the system we have got, which I'll be showing you on this presentation, is culturally neutral. So it's effective across all cultures and is based on human behavior rather than just focused on individual countries or people. We work with governments internationally. We're currently working with a line joint venture on construction, certainly moving in construction with behavioural safety. We advise the International Institute of Risk and Safety Management on travel safety, and really we rely on focus. We focus on quality of what we talk about, and so that hopefully you can leave this presentation with some kind of personal skills that you may be able to look for within your working environment, and just to see things that happen. So please, on this, yes, it's from a security background. I'm currently studying a master's in terrorism studies, but it's also related to people and watching people. So people in the workforce with stress behaviors, and see if you can pick up any details that you may have noticed in your office environment or in your working practices. So it's a unique set of skills, and primarily our background is from the military. So it is a unique set of skills. Have any of you ever seen the film Taken? This little program is nothing like Taken, right? So you forget that. It's a unique set of skills that we use, which is often hidden in military applications, and we've brought it to the market, which I have the pleasure of talking to you now about. So the objectives really is to read situations, help you read situations and enhance your skills within the workforce. Have you ever looked at somebody and thought to yourself, something's not right? I mean, this is every day, and we see it in every program we run. People sort of say, oh, I knew there was something wrong with them. I didn't really pick it up. And I think in the modern workforce, as a modern safety practitioner, is picking up on behaviors and reading situations and laying a foundation where you can actually open up a discussion and potentially get to the root of the problem, because you've identified some behaviors, maybe in the workforce or just on a social basis. So have you ever looked at somebody and thought to yourself, something's not quite right? You know, they look troubled, they look uneasy, they look thoughtful, the thoughts are elsewhere. I mean, how do you deal with it? Do you have a conversation? Do you ask to go for a cup of coffee? What do you do? Or do you just let it go? You know, again, so I think in a modern workforce, we need to look at this. And the first part of this program is to talk to you about how we read risks. Everybody reads situations differently, from varying backgrounds, how you've been brought up, where you've been brought up, and your values. So if you've been brought up in central New York, you'll have a different set of values and risk reading than you would if you were from outer regions of Alabama, or conversely in London compared to where I live in Somerset in the West Country. So we all have different ways of looking at risks. And if you ask everybody how they assess risks and read situations, everybody is very different. So again, I'm going to give you a tool set that actually starts to make you definitively look for indicators within the workplace so you can support your workforce. You can look at it from a safety, from a personal security angle, and also from a well-being angle. Some of those in the security field would have seen this. This is a system we use, a thing called person, object, place. Now, if you take anything from this course, just try and concentrate on risk assessing. If I asked you all on this program how you risk assess, everybody would be different. Everybody would look at something differently. And so the security industry came up with person, object, place, and we use that to advance levels, to advance you into reading situations with a formatted assessment. So please, if you take anything from this course, just remember person, object, place. When we look at persons, for example, people don't always walk around looking like this. You don't have to be a security expert to actually recognize when there is a risk. You know, it's that gut instinct. And that's something we will say in the modern workforce is, you know, if you see somebody looks troubled, or the behavior looks troubled, or somebody you don't know is looking troubled, please don't try and ignore it. Just try and pick up some of the signs to look for and escalate that risk if necessary. Do you like people watching? I think everybody likes people watching. Where do the behaviors come from? You know, where do the behaviors come from? It comes from the brain. So effectively, our thought process in here is shown in our behavior. And I'm going to give you some tips what to look for as we go through now. We call it fizzy bottles. So it's about people under pressure and under pressure. So if just have a look at that. If I was to, some of you may be drinking this for our international clients. There's a little bit of a football match going on this afternoon, which we're going to be watching. But if I was to give you a beer, so virtually I'm going to give you a beer, would you open it? Yes, you would, and you would start drinking. But if I was to shake the beer, you know, what is it about fizzy? What is it about beer you like? Would you open this one? Well, you wouldn't, would you? Because you can clearly see between two bottles that actually, if you open this one, it's going to explode over you. If you open this one, it's fine. We can do that with bottles of beer, but why don't we do it with adult humans? You know, can we see if there's a little bit troubled from their brain? And this is a really good analogy. If you've got a team that work, those of you working with sports teams, those of you working in teams, this is a really good analogy to use with them to talk about pressure and just whether this internally, this is my brain and this is my thought process. So depending on how I feel depends on the risk. So always remember that. And I'm just going to jump out of sequence now is how do you depressurize these bottles? How do you depressurize this? So one of the things we teach particularly is about breathing. So those of you who've got Apple Watches, if you, it's called cyclic breathing, other people call it rotated breathing. Cyclic breathing is potentially taking a deep breath, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds. What that does is it enhances the hippocampus and makes you start to think clearer. Some of our driving programs, and this is something, another little tip for you. We always ask people, do they carry chewing gum in their vehicles? And a lot of people do, yes. You know, is it chewing gum for making their breath smell nice? That's great. But when you ask people when they're driving, which is probably the biggest risk, how many of them have been driving and they can't remember the last half an hour, the last hour, because they're almost in an autopilot. Their hippocampus, e.g. their working memory, is starting to take things just naturally without sort of taking much information. So they go into an autopilot. So this is why we advise that people potentially on long trips chew chewing gum. Clearly on a customer service basis, it's not the best ideal thing because of you know, customer expectations. But if people are driving for long distance, we recommend using chewing gum. And scientists have found that if you chew chewing gum for an extended period of time, what it does is enhance the auditory and visual mechanisms. So you start to hear and see things clearer. So it's a really good thing of stopping this autopilot where people generally come into risk. So, you know, always, I think, is the meaning of life, chewing gum. Certainly before this course, I'm chewing gum just to relax my brain so I become focused on exactly what I'm doing. Again, your decision, but chewing gum is always a good way. And cyclic breathing and also cups of tea are a good way to reduce pressure. Good. So what we're going to look at now is males versus females and how the observation cycle works, really. I mean, is there a difference between how males and females read risks? There's a huge significant difference, and that's down to anthropology. Males typically are hunter-gatherer. Their instinct is hunting and gathering, and they're very distance focused. So they will see risks on a far different, they're more pinpointed. In fact, they read body mechanisms from 4 regions of their brain. So they're very distance focused. So one of the things we talk to when we're dealing with men on some of the training programs about risk is not to become too focused on the risk that they're looking at. Ladies, conversely, have fantastic observational skills. They read from 17 regions of their brains. They are excellent at reading mechanics of people. And, you know, I'll give you a practical scenario. So ladies and gentlemen, when you've been at home and your wife's speaking to you, telling you something very important, has she ever stopped halfway through and said, are you listening to me? Or these type of mechanics. So again, it's working with ladies, you can see their facial expressions mirror what they're actually feeling. And so that's why women are fantastic in procurement or safety situations, because they build rapport quicker and they start to just show what they're feeling inside to people. So it's a great skill that if I could teach gentlemen anything on this course is to observe like ladies observe. Really, really good. Good. What we're going to look at is natural versus natural behavior versus negative behavior. So if you have a look at the arm fold up the top and have a look at my body language, what does my body language say to you now? Most of you would say it's quite defensive. Okay, so what we would talk about is what is the most vulnerable part of a 4-legged animal. And the most vulnerable part is its throat. So if you watch a dog or a horse or a sheep or a goat, when it feels vulnerable, it drops its chin to protect its most vulnerable area. Humans, on the other hand, when we feel vulnerable, because this is our most vulnerable area, we fold our arms. So when I'm looking for the arm fold, I'm looking for something in particular. Now, if you can, what I'd like you all to do is just to fold your arms with me now. Okay, once you've got your arms folded, what I'd like you to do is reverse your arms very quickly and feel how awkward it feels doing the other arm fold. So you can see the core instinct is defensive. But what I'm looking for is I'm looking for these hands. If you see these hands open, like my hands, anthropologically, it's cuddling myself. It's a comfort arm fold. So typically when we ask people what we're looking for is, if you watch somebody in a reception, in a doctor's surgery, or waiting to be interviewed, if we look at their arm folds, if we see these hands, we know it's more comfortable rather than a defensive arm fold, if that makes sense. We're also looking is we look for the hands. Are the hands open? We always look for open hands. And the reason is that when we become defensive, the hands start to close because we start to form what we call an attack cycle. So look at all the hands and see if the hands are open. If you think about it, if we had no hands, there wouldn't be much risk in the world, would there? And then I can't see you now, which is unfortunate. And we like to work with people we can see them. But how do I know when people are listening to me? So how can you recognize when somebody's listening? If you look at my body language now and I come and greet you and say, welcome, what does my body language look like now? It's quite direct if you look at it. So can I put you at ease just by tilting my head and sort of saying, welcome, I'm from Cardinus Risk Management and I have the pleasure of talking to you today. Or welcome, I'm from Cardinus Risk Management, I have the pleasure of talking to you today. So think about what your body language looks like towards other people, not the opposite way around. You try and blend in. And we often talk to people that if you're in an enforcement role, or if you're in a health and safety advisory role and you have to talk to people about their behavior, or you have a one-to-one in any setting, try and open up the conversation by tilting your head. And so it's a calming effect in humans. You see it in animals. It actually comes from where we used to rest our head on our mother's breast. So when humans are calm and listening, you'll see their heads tilt over. And it's quite a common thing to look for, to know that people are quite relaxed. We also look for blink rates. A little bit further in, how often do you blink in a minute? It's about 12 to 15 times in a minute. And that depends on lighting conditions, air conditions, wind, etc. So you use your common sense on that. But you can look at somebody for 10, 15 seconds and see how quickly they're blinking. Should get 3 or 4 in 15 seconds, and to know that they have natural thought process. If we then look for people under pressure, what we call negative behavior, can we see a difference? Can we see a difference? So the first thing I want you to look for is people under pressure. And again, think about well-being in the workplace. If you watch my body language now, you can see a slight change. And people say, yeah, he's agitated, upset. If you watch people, even with gloves on, you'll see them doing things like this, drying their hands. If we look at that anthropologically from a historical point of view, we used to fight with sticks and stones. And actually, subconsciously, I know that I can't defend myself. So if I pick this beer bottle up, I can't defend myself with damp hands. And so what you'll start to see happen when my behavior changes, you'll start to see me drying my hands on my clothes. Most of you would have seen this in business. When you look at it and you'll say, okay, is everybody happy? Yeah, we're happy. It's good, ready to go. And it's just a little indicator for you to look for. The next thing I want you to look for is these joints locking. Do the joints lock? You know, if I show you what practically this looks like, you've all seen this. You see the difference. The joints are locking. Because my behavior has changed, I've become more defensive, what you'll start to see is the joints lock and you'll see the hands close. So I'll guarantee if you meet somebody that is, you're not welcome to meet them, or they're slightly frustrated or have a busy day, actually watch them as they approach you. You know, potentially you'll see this. This is the time when, if you're in a business meeting, is to give them something. Give them a business card and see what they do with it. So if one of you give me this business card, what have I done when I received this card? Is I've opened up my core. So I'm showing you that I'm actually already starting to build a rapport with you. If you gave me the card and they just put it under your arm, what does it tell you about them? It tells you that they are still emotionally defensive and they're not with you. So when you give your business card to somebody, just watch what they do with it and see what they do. Again, think about the workforce. If you want to open up a conversation about people who are showing signs of stress, then just kind of, give them something, give them information sheets and just see what they do with it. And it gives you a good gauge of where people are. Whatever you do, don't give them a machine gun or a hand grenade, because that's a bit high risk. Good. So we were looking for the hands, sweaty palms. We're also looking for, and some of you will have seen this, if you watch a dog, when you first approach a dog, it doesn't know if you're friend or foe, a dog will drop its chin. That's the defense. Humans will fold their arms in a defensive arm fold. If you watch very carefully on the back of the dog's neck, you will see what we call the fur rise, which is what we call the pele activation. And you'll see the fur rise on the back of the neck. In humans, we no longer have fur on the back of their necks, although parts of Somerset where I live, apparently they still do. But in humans, we don't have fur on the back of our necks, but we still have an ancient nerve in the back of our neck called the pele erecti. And what you will see when people are becoming agitated, you'll see the hand go to the back of the neck, generally 3 or 4 times. And it's a definite movement. It's not an itch. It's a definite movement to the back of the neck. Now, that is one sign I'm going to say to you is please, 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 do not ignore it. Is your communication working? Is there a pressure build within the situation? So if you start seeing things like this, and then the pele activation, just recognize that there's some kind of change in that person's behavior, potentially from a security aspect if you're walking down the road and you see it, or if you see a colleague in a work environment where they obviously under stress and you see hands go into the back of the neck, etc. Just watch for it, and maybe it's time to intervene and ask if they're okay with the projects they're working on, etc. We also see at the bottom here is we see lip movement. So you will also start to see the lips being licked. Apes, when they become hostile, actually bare their teeth. Humans, when we become hostile, what we do is we don't bare our teeth, but we start licking our lips. And that's because of a lack of a chemical going into the mouth called serotonin. So when we're becoming agitated, hostile, defensive, you will see the lips being licked and wetting of the mouth because our mouth's dry. These are all things just to look for, just to build up a picture of human behavior. So let's have a look at it. What do you think the mood is of this person who each answered that question? What's their mood? Sort of hostile, aggressive. So are you as strong as an ape? Are you as fast as an ape? Are you as agile as an ape? And actually an ape is 18 times stronger than the average human. So actually you can pick a mood up from this picture. But actually in real life, in real circumstances, because we've lost speed, agility, and strength, humans, you and I, are one of the only animals in the human mankind whose majority of their eyes are white. In fact, apes do not have whites of the eyes. Their eyes are black and brown. And so if you look in an ape's eyes, you don't know if it's passive, aggressive, or defensive. And that's very much the majority of the animal kingdom. Humans, you look them in the eyes and you can pick up a mood. Okay, you can all tell me when somebody's staring at you. Can you feel it when somebody's staring at you? And so what's wrong with this picture, when we look at it, if we go back to the picture, we can see what they've done is they've given it human eyes. And that's where you get the mood from. So the eyes are very important to recognize about the mood of people. And you can see those eye movements from about 30 feet away. So we work on a principle of 10 meters. So if you're 10 meters, 30 feet away from somebody, you can tell if they're staring at you. Could be on public transport, could be walking, could be in the office location. Are the eyes fixed? Can we pick up a mood? So to really, really get a behavior of somebody, what I'm asking you to do is to consider being within 30 feet, 10 meters of somebody so that you can pick up the pattern of the eyes, the movement of the eyes and their mood. You know, typically when somebody is becoming agitated and hostile, what happens is the eyes actually start to blink less. So we get 4 or 5 blinks in a minute. So you can watch somebody quickly for around about, 10 seconds, and then you should see their blink rate rapidly slower than normal blink rate. So again, just an indicator, just something to think about, maybe approaching somebody, are you okay? How was your journey into work? Fatigue, mental health, wellness, everything involved, and just look for the behavior. Good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this in a video contest to see if you can pick somebody up. So this setting is really for you and your families. When you're out and about having coffee, everybody likes watching people when they're having a coffee. Just going to have a look at a little video and I'll talk you through it. And I'm going to use a range between 10 and 2. Okay, this is a clock. And this is where humans actually start to really focus on risk, between 10 and 2. Good, so let's have a look at this video. Okay, so as I'm observing here, if you look at, say, 11 o'clock, I've got a man on the bench and we see an arm fold and a Pelé activation. What I'm looking for now is I'm going to really sweep around 360 degrees around and just have a look to see is anybody else involved. So, and that's typically what happens. You know, men, we read from 4 regions of our brain. We become very focused and we don't open up our vision. So if I'm looking now, what I'm looking for is I'm doing a 360 sweep and I'm seeing this guy at 2 o'clock sitting at the bench. Is he reading that newspaper? Yeah, is his vision actually doing what he should be doing when reading a newspaper? So when we look at person, object, place, we look at the setting, we look at the place, and is their behavior natural in that setting? If you look at everybody else, hands are open, what we call a natural walking gait, going from A to B. If we look now, that the guy on the bench at 11 o'clock is clearly not happy about something. And if we focus on the person at 1 o'clock, we see that there's an increased risk. Good. So without any trend, this is a picture here. This is me driving this vehicle. As you can see, we've got a sat nav on the dashboard. Just looking at this from a person, object, place risk assessment then. If we look at the place, and what I'm going to ask you to do is we literally cut and paste everything out. So cars to us are objects, and obviously they're people, but if you extract them from this picture, where are the risks in this location? Yeah, it's a high-rise block of flats. There's traffic lights impeding our travel. It's a one long road. There's not many exits and there's confined spaces in there. So a risk in this place is high. If you put the objects in, then you'll start to see that the vehicle is being enclosed. So if you look at 10 o'clock, you have a lady in the orange shirt and a lady in a pink shirt. If you look at them very quickly, look at the hands. Hands are all open. The joints are loose. Their vision's off. They're clear. They're not a problem at all. But if you go to 11 o'clock and you look at the person in the yellow t-shirt, he's fixed focus on us. So we would anticipate that his vision is fixed. His hands are slightly clenched and he's focused on our vehicle. If we switch then to 12 o'clock and see the person in the middle of the road, remember person, object, place. Is it normal to walk in the middle of the road when there's loads of traffic around like we see now? His hands are clenched and his vision's off. So has he just indicated to the person in yellow that we've got an item in our front dashboard? Now this photo it was taken in downtown Johannesburg in South Africa, and it's reported as the second highest murder rate in the world in this location now. So obviously we're watching people very, very closely. So what's interesting about little programs when you talk about natural behavior versus negative, if I showed you that picture at the start of this talk, would you have picked anything up except what you instinctively look for? And that's something to hold on to, is never, ever, ever ignore your instinct. If things don't feel quite right, things aren't right. So build on that instinct, start to look for these different signs. You know, can you see this in people? I mean, watch my body language. Can you see this in people? What does my body language say to you now? Yeah, quite relaxed, head tilt, arm fold, open hands, quite natural. But if I sit forward, yeah, then we start to see the chemicals changing. I start to become agitated. You'll start to see drying of the hands. You even see it with gloves on. You'll see people doing this. Yeah, the next thing you may see is the joints locking. Okay, and again, think of my brain. That's me becoming agitated and hostile. Again, if you see the PLA activation in the back of the neck, then we're definitely recognizing that things aren't quite right. So you can use these skills not only in safety, but not only in your personal safety, but also in your procurement. Watch when you're in business meetings. People can often say something, but their body language looks very differently. You know, is everybody okay with the change that we're carrying out? Is everybody okay with supporting each other at home working? Yeah, I'm fine. No problem. I'm quite happy with that. And clearly we're seeing there's hidden mechanisms that we need to open up as professionals. So really, really look for this amongst your workforce, particularly in stress, well-being, and again, in safety mechanisms when they're traveling. You know, it breaks my heart to read things like the Manchester Arena bombing, when you see somebody sat in a foyer of an arena for an hour and a half and not get picked up for his behaviour, knowing that he's about to commit suicide. So, I mean, that's a generic, and there's lots of reports on that, but it really, really annoys me that people can't pick up natural behaviour or negative behaviour in different settings. So please hold on to these little things that I'm showing you. Good. And just remember, you know, if you do see a negative situation, always have an exit strategy. Always kind of think about how do you exit? Where do you exit from? We often speak to people and they say, you know, Andy, I get disorientated. I mean, because what happens to you physically when this is going on? What happens is your adrenaline is released into the body, your heart rate increases, all the blood is pumped from the core of the body into the core. That's why your legs shake and you get butterfly feelings. Your actual dexterity drops. So in difficult situations like active shooters, don't think you can use phones correctly. You know, people fall over, they trip, and it's all about planning and planning your preparation. Again, I'm switching a little bit towards security, and it shouldn't be. But just remember when people's behavior, look for the licking of the lips, back of the neck, and all other aspects. And have an exit strategy. So one of the most key important things for us is knowing when to walk away. So your positioning is critical. I can't show you this virtually, but if I was to ask you all to line up and face each other, I would pretty much guarantee that you would be standing facing each other 2 arm distances, but you would all be stood shoulder to shoulder next to each other. So, and then we say, why are you stood facing each other? And people say, oh, you know, it's my personal space. And we all have this personal space, which again is between 10 and 2, okay? So when you're talking to somebody and you really want to open them up, just recognize that if you're in this space here, you are psychologically affecting me because my core is exposed. So again, as professionals, if you're trying to, you know, investigate or maybe just open up a conversation with somebody to talk about maybe a pressure they're under, just try and think about, if you stand in this arc, you will start to cause some pressure and you will create this. All right, there's a great little exercise we do is when we stand in front of you and just to see how that feels. So again, maybe after this course, you go to a work colleague and just ask them just to stand face to face in front of each other. And then the second aspect of it, I want you to stand out of the arc. So again, take one step either side. Now, if you're right-handed, I would go to your right side because that's the stronger side. Go to the right side and just stand out of this arc and just feel yourself, and you ask your colleague how much better you feel when somebody stood to your arc. So the minimum you should do when you're interacting with people or somebody approaches you like a aggressive beggar or somebody asking directions is to actually stand out of arc. Now, in Cardinus, we have some lovely little videos showing you this, of the correct way to approach people and the correct way to stand when people approach you. So please just get in touch. We can send you a video just to show you practically how this works. Good. So you must stand out of the arc, and you must also be able to see the head and feet. Now we should know this now due to the pandemic and the 2 arm distances of 2 meters, but it is approximately 2 arm distances. You should never, ever, ever break down 2 arm distances, yeah, before you've assessed people, and particularly assess their hands. Make sure their hands are out of their pockets. and make sure that you're comfortable with their behavior and watching them. So 2 arm distances out of the arc is the key to interactivity and safety, as well as opening up an environment where you can talk. And it's really, really important when you're talking to people, just to give them some support. Or in security, it's really good because it makes it very difficult for them to get to you, and you can assess their entire body from 2 arm distances. So please, 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 if you can, get used to standing 2 arm distances before you break in to go and speak to somebody. Excellent, well done. Must be able to see the head and feet. That's too close, as you can see. Okay, just to recap then, supporting you in your business, just going to recap. It's looking at, behaviors from stress, from safety and security. Everybody can walk into an area and not feel comfortable. So use person object place model as a risk assessment to enhance the skills of your workforce, and so that you have a tangible risk level. If you think about it, there's thousands of risks that we have to take into account. From our perspective, we only have 2 risks, and that's high and low risk. We start high and then work down using the person object place model. Most people will start low and only start to see risk when it starts to increase around them, which in our opinion is too late. So if you use person object place assessments, it shapes the way you talk with people, it shapes the way you engage with them, and it actually enhances your business productivity, your customer service, and more importantly, it gives a huge boost of confidence to your skill force. We've just carried out some training in construction, and we're doing some empirical evidence behind it to show the improvement. We've done 3 courses. The first course, we showed an improvement of 52%. The second course, we had a 58% improvement with data. And the last course we did was 70% improvement in observational risk and safety. So these mechanisms I'm talking about really work. They work in any environment, and they're culturally neutral. So please, please, please try and use them as a method for you to support your workforce. It really doesn't time fly when you're enjoying yourself. So that's me. I think I've spoken for about 30 minutes, which is my time level. Has anybody got any questions or anything? Anybody got any questions? Everybody happy? Good. Okay. Right, we've got 30 people, 5 chats. Brilliant, thank you for that. Brilliant, okay. Somebody's asking you adapt it for a virtual workplace, engage over Zoom and Teams. We do this program over Teams and Zoom. It is hard, but yes, we can. That's what we've been doing for the last year because of the pandemic, etc. Thank you, everybody. Really good. Okay, so we're going to probably close it down. Thanks for your time, everybody, on this. Please get in touch if you need any details at all to support you and your workforce. So really good. Thank you.